Hello and welcome to Move the Line, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm Ryan Noonan, joined here, as always, by my friends to talk about sides and totals, best matchups here in the Week 11 NFL slate. Joining here as always, Connor Allen. Connor, technical difficulties on my end today. You don't have to look at my face, so that you just get this lovely picture of me. I'm sorry, I look really good today. I just need you to know that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I enjoy seeing your facial expressions during mid-show because I think one of me or Clark will say something, and I think we all like kind of make faces at each other occasionally, and so I definitely will miss that aspect of it. But I don't know. I think this is a pretty sharp photo, so it definitely feels a little weird, but I could probably get used to it.
Yeah, this is my VR photo. I was thinking VR, who just like could not get over the fact that I had a pixelation in my Twitter bio photo, and he needed me to update it was just a thing. Like I can't imagine being so obsessed about my Twitter bio photo, but VR was for a little bit, and I upgraded this for him. So this always reminds me of me having to yell to my wife, "Can you come please take a picture of me?" Another grown man is not happy with my current picture. So here we are. Sharp Clark, you got a nice hat on today, bud.
Yeah. Pulled out the week. Bills let me down for a couple teaser legs on Monday night. That was very disappointing, but overall it was good. I'm just gonna have to get used to the unnerving feeling of you not blinking. So
That's true. Yeah, I my computer sounds like it's like on a airplane tarmac and it's about to take off. And yeah, just don't want to impact the quality of the show. The audio is okay. We're gonna go audio only. If you were hanging out on YouTube, sorry, you have to look at me staring at you continuously. If you're enjoying this via podcast, then it's fine. It's like nothing even happened. So if you were hanging out with us on YouTube, we appreciate it. This is where we'll be every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe. All those things go a long way in helping us podcast in your feed on Wednesday evenings as well. A reminder, this is one of two episodes of Move the Line each week. Prop Drop is our player prop focused show on Fridays. That's 3 p.m. Eastern on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel, and then later in the podcast as well. So subscribe so you don't miss one of those shows. We continue to have fun doing that every week with John Hyslop from Odds Jam. Talked about it last week. I want to remind you, if you have not taken advantage of this, the betting subscription right now is massively discounted. The betting sub is basically access to everything that 4for4 does. So no matter what you're doing, whether you bet or not, you're playing, DFS still, you're still doing, you want to do like playoff best ball content. Like we're going to have content there. Discord is the access that you really want to get all the picks that the three of us put out. You can use promo code BETS50, BETS50 to get 50% off of what's already 50% discounted. You're basically at a spot where it's like $62 to bet with us for the next 3.5 months. Because, NFL season's going into the early February with playoffs and Super Bowl. We're betting NBA as well. We have, a team that's firing. Kevin O'Brien's doing an awesome job. We get some other people, just that NBA chats popping all the time. If you're playing any of the pick'em games, Prize Picks, Underdog, Vivid Picks, we have channels there as well. Again, 4for4.com, promo code BETS50 for an additional 50% off of the betting sub. Come check it out. I'm really excited. Last week was weird. Some really weird outcomes. Again, you have all these late finishes with field goals at the end of the game, and interested to see how it shapes, futures markets, looking at anything on that side in terms of, I'm enamored with the defensive player of the year market. Connor, is there anything that's catching your eye or that you're watching in terms of markets this week, dynamics, anything that you want to track over the next couple of weeks? What market has your eye in terms of futures?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one here because we did get down some mid-season futures. We bet Giants have the worst regular season record, and I think it's pretty clear now that they are, trying to locking in Tommy DeVito there as a starting quarterback. I think he's been the worst quarterback in the league by a pretty wide margin, and so he just doesn't have a lot around him either. And I think Dable is a good coach, but there's only so much he can do when literally his entire team is injured and they were already super thin as is. I know Clark talked about that early. So I don't know what the number is on that right now, but I would still like that as well. Overall though, I think kind of potentially buying low on Mike McDaniel is interesting, but it's tough. I feel like with the Texans, and I was thinking about this last night, is that the Coach of the Year award with DeMeco Ryans feels a lot like Brian Dable last year, where he has a team that had very low expectations. They had very, low hype around them, and now they're on the fringe of potentially making the playoffs, going forward if they keep winning. So I think plus 300 there. If maybe you've taken some action on McDaniel like myself, or Dan Campbell early in the season would be a great hedge, because I don't know if they're going to win like 10 plus games, but I mean they're an incredible story so far.
Yeah, the Dan Campbell stuff's interesting, Clark, too, because the expectations are relatively high to start the year, right? They're favored to win the division. He was in the mix towards the tail end of last year. And we know last year, too, was very much a exceeding expectations award, because Sirianni, I mean, it's really hard to argue that Sirianni did not deserve that award. Again, that kind of shows you how thin these markets can be and how they can be so impacted by recency bias late in the season and what happened there. But what do we do with the Coach of the Year? Where Dan Campbell, they're going to win 14 games. He probably gets it if that happens. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in DeMeco Ryans and or some other stuff too. I mean, like the Defensive Player of the Year one is the one I keep going back to. But yeah, what else has your attention? Your Browns one, man. Your Browns to miss the playoffs roller coaster in the last say 48 hours or so.
Yeah, big loss on that one when they beat the Ravens somehow in that game, and then Deshaun Watson gets hurt for the year, so now it's kind of back alive. Although, with their relative ease of schedule and how good the defense is playing, like I'm still, still clutching that pretty tight. I wouldn't add to the position, although I do think I think it's being generous right now in terms of projecting the Browns to make the playoffs. But because I already have that position, I'm not looking to add to it. On Coach of the Year, real quick, just the Lions' schedule down the stretch looks fairly manageable, and what we're seeing in sort of the media reactions and Twitter reactions is just how results oriented everybody is, and especially how recency bias influences those perceptions. And so, I think the Texans might have a tough final stretch. And I just think that a team that loses its last few games, there's so much emphasis on recency that I think if the Lions close the season strong, that really boosts Dan Campbell's resume. And Mike McDaniel has a tough stretch as well down the stretch for Miami. So I think that's something to consider when you're betting awards markets.
Yeah, the recency bias is really strong. I do think if it's something that you want to get into, I do think having in trying to be smart in developing a portfolio at times and looking for opportunities to buy, at the top of things is the right position to try to get into now as we start to kind of see these markets develop. I mean, like the comeback player of the year one is really wild as well, with like the whole DeMar Hamlin thing, like active last week, didn't really do anything. Comes in, gets a tackle. But like what happens there? It's the second time he's been active. And comeback is so nebulous. Like, what are you coming back from? Like, is Josh Dobbs, what's he coming back from? It just is a really, really bizarre award. So yeah, I like to talk about those at the top of every show as we move forward here, but let's jump into our games here this week. We have some interesting ones. We'll get started with that one with the news. Obviously, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, a ton of movement on the side and total here with the Deshaun Watson news today on Wednesday morning. This was 5.5 on Cleveland side in the look ahead market, down to 4.5, reopened at Cleveland -4. And then with Watson out, it dipped to like Cleveland -2.5 on the first wave. It's now like a pick 'em. There are ones on either side, depending on where you want to get down. Totals massively plummeted as well, down from 38.5 to 33.5. Again, Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback over PJ Walker. That did not go so well in the one start against Baltimore early this season. Where are we at now here, Connor? Now this is basically a pick with Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
It's crazy because I think the Steelers are massive, frauds here overall. I mean, they're 6-3 right now. They have a negative 26-point differential, ranked 26th in points scored, 28th in yards, 24th in offensive EPA per play. The key is they're 6-0 in one-score games. And if we look at the last time these two teams met, it was I think 26-22 final score here. 2 of their touchdowns were defensive, and the other one was a 71-yard run or a catch and run by George Pickens, where he had an awesome play. He's a good player. He just not very consistent. And he obviously had like a highlight reel moment there to score a touchdown for them. So basically the majority of their points came on those plays there. And I don't think that that's really consistent. The total in this game is 33.5. This is the second lowest total in the last 10 years. The only other one was the Cleveland Saints game where there was 40+ mile per hour winds. And there's no at least I haven't seen no weather that's going to crazily impact this year. So it's literally just 2 bad offenses playing against Cleveland defense that I think is really, really strong, and a Steelers defense that, has its moments here and there. So I go back and forth on this one, honestly, because I don't think DTR is very good. I think this Browns defense is awesome. On the other hand, I want to fade the Steelers. I'm just not really sure this is the spot to do it here. I don't know. I'm curious to hear, Clark, your opinion, because I feel like I was really interested in the Browns before Deshaun Watson was out, and I'm glad that I did not lock that in, obviously, given the news.
Yeah, it's the same for me. This was shaping up to be a play on the Browns this week because, Pittsburgh has been slowly losing pieces on defense. They lost Quan Alexander to the IR 2 weeks ago. This week, they lost another linebacker in Cole Holcomb. Minka Fitzpatrick is questionable. He missed last week and the week before. These guys matter for a Steelers defense that sure, it has TJ Watt, but even TJ Watt hasn't really been having the same impact on these games that he has in years past. Cam Hayward is back. That's good. But this is a defense that I think is a little bit overrated overall, especially with those injuries. And then on the other side of the ball, Deshaun Watson really did kind of put it together a little bit in that second half, like enough to show that he can move the ball, against a good defense. He wasn't fantastic by any means, but he was kind of showing some improvement, which I think is what Browns fans have been looking for. But without Deshaun Watson, I think this is a massive downgrade. I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was really terrible in his first start. And I don't college scout, so I don't have a strong opinion on him, but someone that I trust in the college space thinks he's absolutely terrible. And if you don't have a quarterback, it's really tough to win in a tough game like this. But the thing is, if that one game sample was misleading, and if he's been shoring things up in practice and really been putting things together, they obviously trust him over PJ Walker. Then I think this could be like a runaway victory for the Browns. So I'm not looking to tease this game. If one side gets to be a 1.5, 2.5 point underdog, this is a complete pass for me, a complete uncertainty pass. I don't think the range of outcomes skews towards one side more heavily. This is just, I'm excited. I'm having fun watching the bettors fight over it, and I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm not participating myself.
Even the move that we had looked like we were stable at 2.5, and then within the last hour or so, it took some more money, Pittsburgh money. So yeah, it's just one of those spots where it's like we want to find opportunities to fade Pittsburgh, but they're not going to give it to us this week. They're 6-3. They've been outgained by their opponents in every game, as you mentioned. Like they are losing key starters on the defensive side every week. None of it matters. The whole premise of this like bend but don't break defense stuff, I think is garbage. But they've allowed the 5th most yards per drive this season. They've been fantastic defensively in the red zone. They've allowed the 4th lowest touchdown rate on red zone drives. So that's one way to get it done. If you think that you're so good, then why don't you tighten them up on like the 20s? I don't know, maybe try that. But they seem to have a recipe that works. And this is an interesting spot too, where like, hey, we didn't even talk about Mike Tomlin and the coach of the year discussion there quickly. It's like, they're about to be 7-3. I mean, stuff's going on in Cleveland. He's never won the award. It's a wild time in Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett is not playing really good football. It's kind of a mess. And look at Cleveland. They won a game last week that they were trailing for 59 minutes and 20 seconds of the game. They had that quick, Kyle Hamilton, great play, tip, pick. And, that game looked like multiple times that Baltimore was just kind of out and running away with it. And just a really weird, wonky game. And I don't have a great feel for it. It is something that I'm going to watch and I think is impactful, as I talked about earlier. Look, you got 2 guys here with TJ Watt and Myles Garrett that are impactful at the top of the board in the 3-man defensive player of the year race. And I think it's hard for someone to not make the playoffs and win this award unless you're like setting all-time records in terms of like sacks or pressures or things like that. And it's going to be, I don't know. I don't feel good about either these teams making the playoffs, but here we are. One of them, I mean, Pittsburgh could be 7-3 at the end of this, and that becomes really challenging. This is one I'm sitting out on. I don't even really want to watch, but I think it does have an impact massively in terms of, AFC North futures and even some other futures there as well.
The Steelers are going to be the team that makes the playoffs and then is like a 10-point underdog like the first weekend and like just gets absolutely steamrolled in the playoffs by a good team. Like we see it like, almost every year where there's just like some shit team that makes the playoffs somehow and they get rolled. So that's my prediction for them, at least, because I think they're going to win some more random games like this. I mean, like imagine like what a great run out to be playing the Browns in this situation. You know what I mean?
There are so many fun teams in the AFC. If we get Browns and Steelers, sorry, Browns and Steelers fans, if we get Browns or Steelers or Browns and Steelers in the playoffs, considering a number of fun teams that are like I think 11 teams are 500 or better in the AFC, and a lot of them are fun with young quarterbacks that I think we're excited to watch for like the next 5 to 7 years, and we're going to get stuck with Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kenny Pickett, on the road in Miami or something like that. It's just going to be abysmal. Don't want to watch that. So, all right, we'll keep moving here. Arizona on the road in Houston. The Texans as a 4.5 point home favorite here on FanDuel. There are 5s in the market as well, so you can shop around. Totals moved around some key numbers here. Opened at 46.5. Got bet out to 48.5. Looks like we've kind of stabilized around 47.5. So kind of, important if you have a lean. Those things matter. I think if you would have asked me in August if a week 11 Cardinals Texan game would make the short list of show sheet this week, I probably would have laughed at you, but here we are. Very interesting spot here and an interesting game for both clubs here. Clark, I'll let you get started with Cardinals Texans.
Yeah, the unit in this game that I think is the most mispriced potentially is the Cardinals defense. They're still being treated as a bad unit, and they haven't been bad for 4 weeks in a row now. For their last 4 opponents, Seattle, Baltimore, Cleveland, and Atlanta, all played below expectation by my metrics against this defense. And I think they're pretty good. I mean, Budda Baker came back off the IR. He's huge. They missed Jalen Thompson, the other safety, missed some games. Jonathan Ledbetter missed some games. He's maybe not a huge impactful player, but they rotate guys in and out a lot at that lineup, so every player matters. And since those guys have all come back, they've been a pretty good unit. And, CJ Stroud is getting a lot of love, and he's a really, really good quarterback. Like, it's legitimate. But it's also kind of like players ebb and flow. Players have good or bad performances, especially young players. And I think if you're kind of, buying into the Texans offense at this point, you're buying in at basically the ceiling. So I think there's an angle here to kind of expect the Cardinals defense to be better than expected, but my numbers don't like the Cardinals on the spread. I actually like the under in this game because Kyler Murray is also an inconsistent quarterback, and both these teams like to play a lot of zone and they don't like to blitz a lot. And so that kind of defensive approach forces quarterbacks into taking the checkdowns, taking the short stuff, taking the easy stuff. Stroud can do that, and that they'll probably move the ball much more easily than Arizona will. But it still takes time off the clock when he does that. Kyler Murray is not great at that. That's his weakness. He'll throw over the middle too aggressively, get picked off. Penalties have been a problem even his whole career. And then last week it was the same thing. Fumbling snaps. Like, how many of those shotgun snaps go above his head? Like, he's tiny, and it's one of those kills a drive. Long third downs that he miraculously completes. That wasn't happening last year. And I think it's just a very inconsistent way to go about offense. So I don't expect this Cardinals-Texans game to be justified as the highest total on the board this week, which is kind of crazy to me considering the two offenses we're dealing with here. Texans defense also is not a slouch. Like, they can play. D'Amico Ryans is a good head coach, and their defensive scheme works. They've got guys back. Derek Stingley came back last week. They're pretty much healthy on defense too. So this is a game that I think even at 48, which you can get at some places right now, I would play the under. I'd play the under to 47.5, but at 47, I would not play it anymore.
This is an interesting one, Connor. I mean, we talked extensively in the past. We know players don't tank, organizations can tank, but playing Kyler is not a move that you make organizationally if you're trying to lose football games. And we saw an up and down performance as expected, right? First game back, new offensive coordinator, but he won the game for them on that 3rd and 10 scramble on the final drive with a minute and a half to go. That was vintage Kyler. That doesn't Josh Dobbs isn't getting out of that. Clayton Tune sure as hell isn't getting out of that play. And that set him up for the field goal. And that's very interesting here with the Cardinals, who could play spoilers here down the stretch. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it is a really unique game here. I guess it's a good point with Arizona's defense playing better as of late. I mean, I think better still probably only puts them at a league average unit, and I don't really see them being a good defense at this point, even though they played a little bit better. I guess my biggest notes were that Kyler looked mobile, and I think that's the most important part of the recovery, and that the speed of the game and the processing and the decision-making will kind of take a little bit longer to come back. But him being able to run and, be mobile, I think is really important to his full allotment of, being able to play in this game here. This Texans defense has been really all over the place. It's like right when you get back in on them, they get, absolutely rolled by the Bucks. And then right. And when you're like, okay, well, they're not that good. They do a pretty good job against the Bengals. So it's sometimes, obviously they still let up plenty of points there, but it's one of those things where the Texans are just a very uneven team right now. And they're going through the roller coaster of just being like a team that can basically beat anyone right now, but can also lose by, 10, 20. They lost to the Panthers a couple weeks ago. And I think the Panthers are one of the worst teams in the league at this point. Like if you were to reline that game, I think that, having not seen what happened there, I think we would be pretty surprised at what that spread would be relative to the outcome. So this game is really interesting to me. My take was initially over because, of the matchup here. And I thought the Texans would be able to continue running the ball, which I think is really important here because this Cardinals defense has still let up a good amount of rushing yards as of late. And it's something the Texans didn't really have early on in the season. Like they were not able to run the ball for basically every single game until last week. And so I think
it's a Bengals thing. I think that's a Bengals feature.
Probably.
I think.
Yeah, probably. And so that's the concern. So I go back and forth. Honestly, it's probably another stay away. If I had to bet on it, it would probably be Cardinals against the spread here, just because I thought Kyler kind of impressed me here. It's like +5, I think, on the road. So,
there were a couple of things late in that game in Houston or in Cincinnati in the Houston game where like we were really close to that being just kind of a boring fourth quarter where Houston was on cruise control. We've just been in here like, hey, Houston just went into Cincinnati and boat raced them. And without their best receiver, Jimmy Ward, starting safety, out last week. We just haven't seen all of Houston yet, I don't think. I'm just interested to see what that looks like when now Noah Brown's kind of emerged. If they can get more offensive linemen back, if they can get Ward back this week, now that Stingley's back. Petrie missed some time earlier this season. Like Denzel Perryman is now suspended for 3 games, but they have a 4 linebacker rotation. So like they'll miss Perryman a little bit, but not much. They'll be able to figure it out. So I don't know. I think that if the Texans need to be considered actual contenders here, whether that's like to come up and win this division or to take one of these bottom spots in the AFC playoff picture, you have to win at home against Arizona. Does that mean that you win by margin and cover? Not necessarily, but I lean Texans here. I'm not really buying the resurgent Cardinals defense in this spot. So that'd be my lean, but I want to see the injury report. Like we saw last week, the Wednesday injury report for Houston was it was like a CVS receipt. I'd love to see some of those guys get back and make sure that everyone's here and in play and see what happens with Nico Collins. And if we can get really a ceiling outcome from the Texans offense, if they can get everyone healthy. So that would be my lean here. Yeah. At this point, I think it's really clear that the Cardinals are going to be playing competitive football with Kyler Murray from here on for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I would note, Connor, on Kyler Murray's mobility against the Falcons is that the Falcons are, relatively speaking, a very man-heavy defense in today's NFL, and the Texans are very zone-heavy. And when defenders are staying in their zones and keeping their eyes on the quarterback, looking down the field, it's a lot harder for mobile quarterbacks to make stuff happen like that, as it is against a man defense that typically the players are running with the receivers. So I think that we should expect a little bit of a drop-off in Murray's rushing in this game.
Yeah, that 3rd and 10 was vintage Murray to back himself out of that, scramble around, just little squirrel running around, the pitter patter of his feet, and to extend it, and to it was good stuff. It's why that guy is has a big old contract, was taken 1st overall, and everyone thought he could be an it guy. It'd be very interesting to see what happens there in the offseason. So, but if they're going to win football games, they kind of take themselves out of the equation for having to make a move there. So. All right, next one. Chargers are on the road in Green Bay. 3-point road favorites here for the Chargers. There are some 3.5s out there, or there were at open at least. So 3 looks like it's holding steady. Over's taking a little bit of action. There were 42s at open. Now look like we're 44 in some spots. Again, 1.5, not massive, but around a key number of 44 is not an insignificant move. So shop around depending on what you want to do there. I have a really difficult time handicapping these two teams. This should be theoretically one of the better spots for Jordan Love this season in terms of matchup, because Chargers pass defense has been absolutely terrible. Jordan Love is impossible to trust, and really anything on the Packers side right now feels impossible to trust. Connor, what are your thoughts on Chargers, Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, to contextualize that, this Chargers defense is allowing the most passing plays of 30 yards or more, and Jordan Love actually leads the league in 30-yard passing plays or more, is tied, I believe. So it's really unique because I think he also leads the league in inaccurate, or maybe he's top 3 in inaccurate passes. And so we don't really know what to expect on a per play basis here, but I think there are a couple things that it's a little bit gross here. And my initial take was on the Chargers, but the more I dug in, I kind of like the Packers in this spot here. And I don't necessarily feel good about it, but I think it's kind of the right play here. Green Bay playing cover 3, nearly half their snaps. And then against cover 3 so far, Herbert 28th in completion rate, 7 yards per attempt. I think the Chargers running game should have a little bit more success than we've seen because they've been facing off against a bunch of top 5 run defenses. But the reality is, like, they just haven't been able to get, on a roll running the ball here. So I think it puts a little bit more pressure on the passing game, which just hasn't looked the same on a week-to-week basis without Mike Williams. Obviously looked good against the Lions last week. That was, in my mind, very predictable. We talked about that in the show. And yeah, I think that if the Packers are able to hit a couple of explosive plays here, grabbing the 3, I think is pretty interesting. But again, it's one of those plays where I think it's gross, and it's like close your eyes and trust my handicap type of value here. But I'm curious on your thoughts, Clark.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes the grossest bets are the best bets to make. I grabbed the +3.5 at open, and now it's down to +3. I still like the +3, but I don't think there's a rush to bet it because I don't think there's any material risk of it going to 2.5. I'd be very, very shocked. Whereas I think there is a chance it either goes to an expensive 3 or like a, +3 +100, or even like a 3.5 again. We might see that. But I really like the Packers in the spot at home. The Chargers defense is a little bit of an enigma because they're 4th in the NFL in sacks, but they're only 25th in pressure rate. So they're converting a very high rate of pressures into sacks. And I think that has a lot to do with the types of quarterbacks and offensive lines they've faced. Zach Wilson, obviously, I think they took 7 sacks. Aiden O'Connell took 7 sacks in his first game. They played the Titans with an injured offensive line, sacked Tannehill 5 times. They played Cousins with an injured offensive line, sacked 4 times. And the Packers offensive line has been playing very, very well, especially in pass protection. I was really impressed with them against the Steelers. And giving Jordan Love, I think he has one of the lowest pressure rates allowed in the NFL, despite having a long time to throw and a deep average depth of target, which is a really good combination for making explosive plays happen, which leads right into the Chargers' weakness on defense, which is big pass plays. So I think this is a really good spot at home for Jordan Love to continue to grow. All of his receivers are healthy. All 5 of his main targets are first or second year players. And I think we see first and second year pass catchers in the NFL improve a lot over their first couple of years. So to expect this offense to look a lot better at the end of the year than it did earlier in the year, I think is valid, especially given how many injuries they were dealing with early in the year. I'm a little concerned about the Packers defense because Jair Alexander looks like he probably won't go again. And so Keenan Allen will probably have another big day. But the Chargers offense is very fragile. And one thing about the Lions game was, if you look at the box score, it looks like the Chargers offense, dominated and went blow for blow with the Lions offense. But what the Chargers were doing was so much less sustainable. So many more, not miracle, but like low percentage third down conversions. They had one goal line stand that took 8 plays to get in the end zone because there was a penalty on the first 4th down and then they scored on the second 4th down. That kind of offense is not really sustainable. And so I think there's some material fear that if anything doesn't go right for the Chargers on offense, this +3 is going to look, real easy for the Packers at home. So I lean the +3. I would love to get a +3 +100 or back to +3.5, but this is definitely a Packers side for me.
You guys just ripped my notes. And the explosive rates for the Chargers pass defense. I had literally the sacks and pressure discrepancy on the Green Bay or on the Charger side, which is a very interesting thing. You just don't see that typically, where there's such a discrepancy in terms of sacks and pressure rate. So good job by you guys. I'm kind of with you. I mean, I would like the 3.5. It's gone, but I think you make a good point, Clark. Wait for that to maybe come back on the prop side. Maybe it's, Christian Watson longest, Jordan Love longest completion type of look versus a side here for me, because that just is these two teams are really hard for me to feel consistent or feel strong about. So yeah, Connor's probably right. The gross side is probably the right side, taking the points at home. This is probably closer to a pick in terms of where these teams are at currently. All right, good stuff here. Monday Night Football. We have good island games here this week. Monday Night Football, rematch of the Super Bowl. Philly on the road in Kansas City. Again, we deserve this. We have a bunch of Jets and Raiders and Island games. This is good stuff right here. Both clubs, again, not just the Super Bowl rematch, they're both currently sitting in the top spot in their respective conference in the middle of November. So they are, ready to go back and compete again. It's balanced between 2.5 and 3. So there's some seeing both in the market shop around a little bit. If you have a lean, total's getting hit down a little bit. It was 50.5 in the look ahead market, reopened around 48. We're down to like 45.5 in some spots, which is pretty significant, moving through multiple key numbers there, which I think is interesting. We have both teams coming off of a week 10 bye. We know the magic that is historically Andy Reid off of a bye. Clark, what are your early thoughts here on Eagles and Chiefs?
I'm surprised by the movement on the total here, going that far down, 45.5 for two of the most consistent and best offenses in the NFL. It seems, a bit low. Like, I get the whole primetime unders thing, and it's Arrowhead. It's going to be cold, maybe a little windy, maybe a little rainy, but not enough, in my opinion, to justify the move. What I like on this game is both offenses are going to move the ball well. I mean, I think we know that at this point in the season, but I think the Chiefs defense has been playing better than the Eagles defense has. And the caveat to that is the Eagles have been dealing with some injuries, but at the same time, the Chiefs have faced a tougher schedule. So putting up better metrics against a tougher schedule is typically a good indication of a better defense. And when you throw in the fact that they're playing at home on Monday night, whenever you have a Monday night game, the home field advantage is enhanced in these big game spots because, the fans have been drinking for a while. It's like, people get crazy. We've seen Philadelphia benefit from this home field advantage in their big games this year, right? They beat Miami and they beat Dallas. Those were the two signature wins that Philadelphia has. Both of those were at Philadelphia. So I think going on the road to face a really, really good Chiefs team is a different test. And I definitely like the Chiefs here. I'm a little bit, the price is pretty tough. Like, if you can get -2.5, -110, I think that's fine. But I actually prefer dipping down to the money line. You can get it -140. NFL scores have been a little bit funky this year. And I think, I don't know the full data on this, but I think there are some reasons why we should anticipate more games falling within the 3 than maybe historically. In addition to the extra point moving back several years ago, I think teams are becoming more analytically driven, especially teams like Philadelphia. And that can lead to some decision-making that doesn't follow the sort of typical 7-3 game script that you see, especially in a game where every point is going to matter. So when it comes down to it, having Patrick Mahomes at home on prime time to win the game outright, I think is a much more comfortable bet. And I'm happy laying the extra little bit of juice to take it down to the money line.
Yeah, Connor, where are you at this one? This is going to be an interesting one. I'm also surprised to see the line in terms of the total kind of falling here.
Yeah, my initial lean when I was breaking this down was Philly +3 because that's what it was at for a while. And now we're looking at -2.5. I do think it's interesting, though. So the Eagles defense right now, first in pressure rate, but also dead last in explosive play rate, pass rate allowed. And it's such a unique difference because that's something that you usually don't normally see, right? It's like if you're getting pressure, usually you're able to, kind of limit big things happening. So it's just one of those things where it's, especially because they're not like blitzing through the roof, and a ton as well. So it's one of those things that I'm interested in. Also, they're able to get interior pressure. Like, I almost think that this game could be really unique because is it going to be like a repeat of the Super Bowl where the Chiefs were under nonstop pressure, no one was able to get open, and against Tampa and Mahomes looked horrible? Or are we going to see Mahomes be able to work his magic and exploit the Eagles defense deep downfield and that kind of outcome? And I think both of those are in play, but I do feel good about the Eagles running game here specifically. Chiefs 25th success rate, 31st in EPA per play. They've been playing a little bit better run defense lately, but at the same time, I think this Eagles running game is truly dominant when they want to be. So I think all of those factors working together, because this Chiefs pass defense has been playing really, really well as is. So I don't think that like the Eagles are going to come into this game and go super pass heavy. But I don't know. I go back and forth. I think I like the 3 there, but that's obviously gone. At this point, I didn't see the total move down 45.5. I would probably lean over in this spot. I think it's such a low number for two offenses of this caliber, as you already mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, you can get like the Eagles team total on DraftKings like 20.5, like -120. Like that's an Eagles offense that's been like, again, I've talked about it. Like, I think we haven't even seen it on like full blast yet. I think we've seen like really good versions of it, but like they've had some red zone turnovers and some weird games. Like, I don't know. it's tough. Going against Mahomes at home on prime time off a bye feels like such a bad play, just structurally, historically. But yeah, I mean, I talked about it in look aheads. I thought the 3 was worth grabbing. 2.5 is definitely interesting. Clark definitely seems to be on, worth laying the money line on the Chiefs side, but not an action for me at this point. I would probably grab a team total. Same thing. You can get the Chiefs team total. I think at, 23.5 or something like that, 20, depending on your book and depending on the juice. So those are more interesting to me, or maybe just the game total in general. So, but either way, hopefully we should have a island game that delivers in terms of expectations going into it. So the first island game of the week we are going to finish with here. So you can, skip this if you're listening on Friday and you've already seen the outcome of the game, or you can listen to hear how horrible our analysis is in hindsight. But we're going to talk about the Thursday Night Football game here with the Bengals and Ravens. Ravens 3.5 or 4, depending on your book. Totals out there 45.5 or 46. Disappointing losses for both here in week 10. They're looking to get back. Bengals really need this one. Again, considering what's going on in the division and in the conference, knowing that either the Browns or the Steelers are going to get a win this week. So you really need to not fall back even further here. Some injuries, though, obviously, on both sides, more so on the Bengals side. T. Higgins out. Sam Hubbard unlikely to go. Trey Hendricks possibly going to miss this one too. That's really problematic. Basically, your bookend edge rushers and your number 2 receiver. That did not go well for them last week. Injuries on Baltimore side as well. Marlon Humphrey, tackle Rodney Stanley. Don't know their status here as we get closer to this one, but those are worth monitoring here. And Connor, I'll give you the floor here for Bengals and Ravens.
My biggest note here would be kind of how the Ravens defense has played Cincinnati lately. So Mike McDonald's been the defensive coordinator in 4 games for the Ravens. And in those games, they played a ton of quarters and cover 4 basically, and of not blitzed at all. I think they blitzed 11 total times in 4 games or something like that against the Bengals. And so that's held, Burrow to 5.8 yards per attempt. His highest in all those games is a little bit over 6. And on the whole season, Ravens defense, 3rd in drop back success rate and 2nd in EPA per play. They're playing well. Bengals are without T. Higgins, which I think matters a good bit here. So there's a lot of different factors here that makes me kind of lean towards the Ravens at 3.5 and the under. But I want to buy this Bengals team, but I just think this Ravens defense is so legit, and their offense is playing fairly well as well. We already talked about how the Ravens or the Bengals run defense is a little bit leaky, dead last in explosive running rate allowed, going up against the Ravens, who have, arguably one of the most explosive running backs in the league in Keaton Mitchell. Gus Edwards looked pretty good. I think they're going to have a ton of success on the ground and potentially success through the air as well, or at least middling success. So it's it just makes me lean a little bit towards the Ravens here at 3.5. And that's probably where I'll be playing. It looks like it just took some money. It was 4, and now it's on a 3.5 minus 105. So, there's a chance it looks like they could see a 3 prior to game time.
Interesting, Clark. What are your thoughts on that?
That's interesting to me. My numbers like the Ravens in this spot, but I can't bring myself to bet it, especially at 4, 3.5. Several reasons why. First is it's really hard to quantify a team that is powered by a really, really strong defense, because every projection is a prediction of a range of outcomes. And basically the Ravens have been so close to their high end range of outcome on defense for so many games that it seems like all the variance is the other way, right? So that kind of cautions me a little bit, especially playing a divisional game in which their defense has actually had some of its more kind of low performances in divisional games, especially against Burrow, who's a very elite quarterback. And when elite quarterbacks get over a field goal on the spread, it's typically a pretty good angle, because keeping games close is pretty easy to do. But again, my numbers do not find value on Cincinnati. They definitely lean Baltimore. Instead, I think I'm leaning with Connor and playing into the angle that Mike McDonald really knows how to play defense against Burrow. And I'm getting out of my lane. I'm jumping in your lane. I like Burrow's passing under in this one. I think it's
let's go
257.5. So I'm trying to prop just for fun. But basically, I think he struggles with this type of defense, especially when they can play man on the receivers, especially without T. Higgins. And I do think the Ravens offense is going to be able to kind of chew up clock, move the ball, run the ball. The Bengals defense has been reliant on big plays to turn the ball over. Against the Texans, they were not making the key stops until they had that one interception. And against this 49ers, they were not doing anything on defense except for the interceptions. So I don't think that's a really sustainable way to play defense. I don't think this is the same Bengals defense that can get the ball back in Burrow's hands late in a game in which they're trailing. I think this is the kind of game that the Ravens can salt away if they're leading. And that also is a way to keep the passing yards under for Burrow. So I think there's lots of ways that Baltimore wins and runs up the score in this one. I'd also be interested in sort of like, if you like high leverage, SGP type attacks, I think there's some potential SGPs on the Ravens here to kind of, risk very little to win a lot on the idea that Burrow really struggles in this game without T. Higgins. But other than that, I'm not interested in the game, and I'm not going to have very much money on it.
This is where you miss my face, because Clark's out here talking about same game parlays. He's betting props. Like, I'm losing it over here, and you guys can't even see me reacting. I love it. Connor, you already played Burrow under.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I released Burrow under, and we released. Yeah, it was we got 258. Looking at 257 now. I mean, I said I'd play down to 250. It's never going to reach 250, but I mean, I think our projections have him like a touch above that. But I really like that under. I think it's good luck.
I looked back in 4 games against Baltimore in this year and last year with Mike McDonald. His passing yards have been like consistently in the 210s. Like I think every single game. Maybe there's a 220 in there, but like when you're playing a prop that is basically 50-50, like you do need to win 54% of the time, whatever. Like the idea that it's 257, like I'm willing to take my chances. This isn't the breakout game against the best defense the Ravens have ever been in Baltimore on Thursday night without T. Higgins. So that's definitely a strong play for me.
Well, I remember the first matchup here this season because I had a Roquan Smith tackles over, and the Bengals ran all of like 8 first half plays, which is also in the range of outcomes here because of how Baltimore can run the ball and control and dictate pace in this spot. So, those are other outs for you to take advantage of this play as well, because I think we expect to see more and more of that. Now, Ronnie Stanley certainly helps that. If he's active, that's going to help them be able to do that more successfully. So I'll have to watch that news. But yeah, I would lean the Ravens here. This just gets real interesting on the Bengals side if they happen to lose this one. But yeah, I love the same game parlays from Clark. Fire it up. It's good stuff.
Got to get him in the Friday streets, bro. We just sit there and build same game parlays for an hour.
Yeah, just to be clear, like the size of a bet on something like that should be very, very small compared to what you're betting when you have the actual model to back it up. But yeah,
yes,
for sure.
Yes, has to couch it with something. But yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
very, very measured. All right. Any other things that catch your? Well, here I'm going to start. And you guys tell me if anything else here on the Week 11 board catches your eye. There are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about here as well. And maybe we'll stay in the same vein here. This Jets and Bills game. Obviously, the Bills have been in the news with Ken Dorsey getting fired and all that went on in that Monday Night Football game. This is a really rough spot for theoretically Josh Allen to get back and show us that he's the guy, because he has struggled against the Jets in his career. And even in the last little bit here in his career, we're looking at like 227 yards in the 10 game per game over the 10 games of his career, 9 touchdowns, 10 picks. He has not topped 240 in any of the past 4 meetings and has a 4 to 5 touchdown interception ratio in those games. Connor, any thoughts on Jets Bills?
Yeah, I like the Jets. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's outrageous, but Jets +7, I think is one of my better looks of the week here. They've, basically owned him, and this Bills defense is so bankrupt. I mean, they made Mac Jones look good like a couple weeks ago. I mean, this is like, Mac Jones is like terrible. The offense is horrible. Like I think that this Jets offense is fine. I mean, the issue is that Breece Hall in the running game needs to get going. I mean, that was the most pathetic performance of running I've ever seen in my entire life among that Jets offensive line. But anyways, I think they're able to keep it within 7. The last 3 meetings since basically 2022 when they got, kind of like shored up their defense with like Sauce and everyone together. He has literally 2 passing touchdowns and 5 interceptions, averaging 5.4 and 5.8 yards per attempt. So, just brutal.
Not good. Clark, any thoughts on that matchup or anything else you like on the board?
Yeah, no, that one is tough. The Jets really do a really good job against Josh Allen, but there's no way I'm betting on Zach Wilson against Buffalo, even with 7 points, even with 7.5. Like and I'm also just kind of like, I'm baffled by the Bills, like how they managed to lose games and how they managed to blow covers is incredible. But I still have to trust my process and my metrics, which say the Bills are significantly better than the Jets. So I like well, trying to look at current prices. Yeah, so the Bucks 49ers game is a little bit interesting to me. I'm looking at the over at 41.5. You know, the 49ers score on everybody. Like outside of they had a 3-game slide when Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams were out. Other than that, they score 30 points every week in, week out. The Bucks defense sucks. I mean, we saw CJ Stroud put up like 38 points against them or something. And yet this is lined at 41.5. Baker Mayfield takes shots downfield. Like he's inconsistent, but and they don't run the ball well. But like if they're just going to run into the 49ers defensive line, then they're just going to keep punting and the 49ers are going to keep scoring. But I do think the Bucks can actually put some points on the board, especially in garbage time, because Baker Mayfield is kind of at that point in his career where he's just like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to throw it downfield to Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is going to drop every deep ball. So that's the one way you can really beat the 49ers. I think if the Bucks even put up any kind of life on offense, then this clears 41.5 easily. So
Interesting. We need to talk about the People's Parlay.
All right.
Okay. Because we did it. We had a few weeks ago. We had some success. But right now, this week, we have 5 games that are basically double digits, 9 and above favorites, mostly all at home, other than the Cowboys, who are solid 10.5, 11-point favorites in Carolina. But you have Detroit. The Bears are taking some money. That one's shrunk a little bit. Detroit at home against the Bears. Miami at home against the Raiders. You just mentioned the Niners, and then it is crazy that we live in a world, regardless of who they're playing, the Commanders are a massive favorite, almost 10-point favorite against Danny DeVito and the New York Football Giants. The People's Parlay, 5-leggers. Connor's shaking his head at me. Clark might be in though. Connor, DraftKings, I think minus 138 on these 4. What are your thoughts, Clark? I mean, plus 138. I'm sorry. Plus 138.
Plus 138.
Plus 138. I'm sorry.
I think there's a lot of landmines here. I think the Lions are a landmine. I think, Justin Fields' first game back, the Bears have been playing really good football recently. Underrated football, both offensive line and defense, run defense, secondary is playing better. This is a game that I think, the Lions offense is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but is the game plan going to be as sophisticated for this game against the Bears as it was against the Chargers? I'm not sure. Is Jared Goff trustworthy enough? If there's a couple mistakes, I think the Bears can capitalize. It's not a high percentage play, but when you're adding 4 different ones, and then the one that I'm kind of super interested in is the Giants. Like, I think people are underrating Tommy DeVito just a little bit, which I know that bar is real low, and you can laugh at me all you want, but like I think there's some sneaky upside there that I think people don't realize. So I don't know. I'm out on this one.
Man, I thought you had me for a little bit. Connor, you're poo-pooing it. I think you just are naturally. It didn't even matter, who the teams are, what the handicap is. You're just, you're out.
No, I feel like there's a couple of pretty stable teams that I feel good about, like the Dolphins. I feel pretty good about at home. I feel good about the Niners. I agree with Clark. I think the Lions are good, but I mean, this number is shot down a lot. I think Justin Fields is always live to pull off a win that he doesn't deserve, and the Bears defense has been playing a little bit better.
Yes.
The Giants too. I mean, like obviously, I know Danny DeVito's garbage, but they gave Sam Howell a lot of trouble earlier in the season. Like they scored 7 points on him. You know what I mean? Like it's not a 10-point favorite that I want to back. Now I'm not running to bet the Giants, but I don't know. It's not a team that I want to lay as a big favorite. Even as like a touchdown favorite, I don't even know if I want to lay it there. So
Giants defense is all banged up in the concussion protocol and stuff. So it's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably not going to be great. I don't know. It's just like, I can't bet something that's plus 138 relying on the Commanders to win a game. So,
yeah, I mean, they traded one of their best players to Seattle. They got Thibodeau in concussion protocol. Like Dak, they hung like 600 yards on him. Like that's not DeVito's fault. That's the problem is that like the Commanders are starting to play some actually pretty good football offensively. To go into Seattle and play that game like they did, like that was some good football. So I get you. I mean, it's still surprising me that they're that large of a favorite, but in this scenario, we don't need them to cover the 10. We don't need them to cover 7.5. We just need them to win the football game. And that's, what the difference.
You got to bet it, right? You're betting it, right?
I haven't yet. I did price it out.
man.
I priced it out today because I just wanted to see what it was. Plus 138. It's like plus 131 in some other spots. DraftKings has the best price.
It's not the worst. It's not the worst.
5 legs. I'm with you guys. I mean, it's a bit. I'm joking. I don't want to get behind 5 legs either. But I thought we had to talk about it because it is a spot where you look at the board, you're like, oh, you have all these spots, mostly a home favorites of almost double digits. For these are the times that I think you should, talk about it. And again, like Dallas is the only leg that's not. I think we all feel probably pretty good about the current iteration of Dallas going in and handling their business against what's going on in Carolina right now. So yeah, it's interesting to discuss.
What about last one that I thought was interesting? Jags Titans 7. It looks like Pinnacle's floating to 6.5 here. I don't know. I'm kind of ready to ride the Levis roller coaster again at +7.
No, I love 6.5 if you can get it. It's
Yeah.
only a matter of time. This line, this like Titans offensive line is not good, and now it's like decimated. And I just think it's a bounce back spot for the Jags. I think they pressure him a ton. I think he has trouble. I think he has trouble here just with a lot of pressure. Good bounce back spot for the Jags.
Yeah, I agree. I really 6.5, and it stayed there for a while, but I think today it finally moved up to 7 in most spots. But this is a really, really good spot for the Jags. And, Will Levis, it was a lot of pretty throws in that first week, and then it's been a lot of very inconsistent football behind a bad offensive line with a angry Jags squad. And don't look now, but Trayvon Walker is starting to make a little bit of an impact on the field. Like, still very much disappointment for number 1 overall pick, but this Jaguars defense is definitely a good unit.
Trayvon Walker can do nothing for his whole career, and he'll still have a place in my heart just for the amount of impact he made on my bank account. Shout out Trayvon.
I'm with you. 6.5, I think, is a really, really, really good look in that spot. So, I mean, Levis overall, I'm interested. What he has right now in front of him is really tricky. I think the good thing is he's getting the ball out really quickly. I think he's like top 3 in time to throw, which is surprising, especially when you think about what he did well in that first game where bought himself a ton of time and threw the ball deep. Now, getting the ball out quickly did not translate into a ton of points against a really bad Bucs secondary last week as well. So I think there's still some learning curve going on there with Levis. So not a spot I want to run in front of this week with Jacksonville, who they're struggling, but again, I think it's just a better spot for sure than the Niners. So. All right, guys, I think that wraps us up here for week 11. So sorry you had to look at me not blinking. Because I think that's a record. I didn't blink for almost 53 minutes, which is really impressive. So, before you leave, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe. Make sure you come back on Friday to hang out with us for Prop Drop. Again, 3 p.m. Eastern on the 4for4 Bets YouTube channel. And take advantage of the promo code of BETS50. That's going to get you 50% off of an already discounted betting subscription over at 4for4. 4for4.com/plans. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah!